What's going on, everybody? It's Matt, aka the Lumberjack Landlord, and it is still Fantastic Friday. We've got Mike Zuber from One Rental at a Time. How's it going, Mike?
It's going well, man. I look forward to this conversation because it's important to figure out if this is just going to
Yeah,
be a blip or if this is a trend that we have in front of us. So
yeah,
thank you for thinking of this topic.
absolutely. Happy to do it. So, guys, what we're thinking about talking, or what we're going to talk through, is the are the lumber prices that you're seeing right now when you walk into Home Depot and Lowe's, are those prices, or lumber yards, are they going to stick? Is that the new normal? Is that where things are going to be? And I wanted to specifically talk about this with Mike because he does have that econ background. He does the research of the consumer and seeing the pressure that's applied to them in other spots. So, Mike, I know
Mhm.
that we've talked about inflation about 1.3 million times, and that's the inflation adjusted rate. We've talked about inflation a ton. So kind of walk us through it as you're seeing it with, my paying $9.72 for a 2x4x10, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We really need to figure this out.
Yeah.
Is inflation in construction, which starts with lumber and concrete, and it's going to go to labor. I think that's the big surprise coming is labor is going to get more expensive. Is it the short-term blip that Jerome Powell is telling us it is, but I can guarantee you at night he is praying it is. Because if this becomes a trend and inflation in construction, is 4 or 5% for the foreseeable future, and they throw on a huge infrastructure bill worth 2 to 4 trillion, it's only going to get worse because there's only so much lumber, only so much concrete, only so much labor. We could really see inflation take off, and I think you and I will feel inflation when we go get gas or we go
Yeah.
to the buy food. But I think where inflation is really, really going to add up is housing.
Yeah.
Housing, when you step back and look at a stick build,
Yeah.
it's a lot of wood, it's a
Yep.
lot of wiring, it's 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 just a collection of commodities.
Hmm.
And it has been so fast and dramatic that the first thing that happened is builders slowed down.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing they did. Now what they're doing is they're breaking contracts.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. You agreed to buy it at 320. Sorry, can't buy it at 320 anymore. You got to buy it at 345 or
Yeah.
360 or whatever it
Oh,
is. So this could be a problem because again, if you step back and you're new to the game, inflation in new construction, what happens? Well, if this goes up 20%, it pulls up the entire existing market 8,
mhm.
12, 14% because the thing about economics and inflation is trade-offs, right?
Yep.
One of the things that people say is if meat gets too expensive, you buy chicken. If
Sure.
you can't buy a new car, you buy a used car. Well, guess what? If new construction gets so expensive, the trade-off is existing and it just pulls everything up. And we already saw a 14.6% increase in value last year. We get another double-digit value increase across the country this year.
Yeah.
Uh, Affordability for the average homeowner is going to be a problem.
Yeah. And not only that, but rates too, right? I mean, because rates figure
Oh
into
yeah,
it. And now,
oh yeah.
now rates aren't 2.6 or 2.75 anymore, another 3.5, and you have to buy a point, or you have to buy 2 points. I mean, that's where it's starting to get heavy. But I was you can find me, for all of you congressmen out there that really care what the consumer is going through, you can find me in a Home Depot or Lowe's almost every weekend, putting together my list of material and such. And if you want me to take you through aisle by aisle, I'll show you exactly what inflation looks like X everything. Like really, like CPI X everything. Like, well, it was only up, 0.6%. Yeah, but you took out food, you took out gas, you took out lumber. Like, what else would you like to take out? What are you actually counting at that point, right? And so I think
Yeah.
that's the problem that I have is that, you guys have to you guys got to do the work on that side of it too, or even just listen to Mike or me, because we spend all of our time doing this stuff because we're trying to figure it out for ourselves, which is, all right, that 2x4 used to cost me $2.48 and now is $9.37.
Mhm.
That's basically 4x. That's basically 4x. And even if my workers, they guess what? The guys that I work with, they say, yeah, I could do it for that for last year, but now I'm getting 30% more because that's the only way for me to put people in the front of the line. And so
Yeah.
there's not enough of them to go around. So that's something that they're looking at saying, hey, listen, I can charge, I have elasticity. But I wanted to delve a little bit into the lumber piece, because what I found really interesting was, as I'm going through the lumber yard, stuff that, sheets that used to cost me, like CDX and things like that, which is, you guys are familiar. It's stuff that's used for roofing a lot of times, or to sheet a house if you're not using like an Advantech product. But obviously we use all sorts of different products in when we're redoing and doing rehabs and such. But that stuff used to cost 17, 18 bucks a sheet. And it was $63 a sheet this last weekend when I tried to buy some. 63 bucks a sheet. And what's really interesting is that I look at that number and I'm like, okay, that's about, 3x, 4x. I look at the 2x4s, they're about 3x, 4x. But you know what's super interesting, Mike? The specialty woods and the stuff like wood trim that comes pre-primed, that stuff is up less than 5%.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. And so I did some more research. And so what I started to find was specialty mills, specialty sawmills are the ones that make a lot of that stuff. It's not the big boys. And so the 5 big boys that are out there, the Georgia Pacifics, the Weyerhaeusers, those guys, they don't spend a lot of time on those type of products. They spend a lot of time on the framing products, because you also have to have, and I know you're familiar with this, Mike, because California is the law of rules. And they actually have to have stamps from inspectors saying that it's quality enough product to be used in a stick built house.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so as we kind of went through that, I was like, this is really interesting. We're hearing, who is making all this money in this supply chain? You got the people that own the land that have the wood that you cut down. You got the lumberjacks, right, that cut it down. Then you got the truckers that ship it. Then it shows up to the processing plant, and then they're getting stuff out of it. And if you thought that technology doesn't apply in this world, believe it or not, these newer machines get 20% more yield out of a tree than the older machines did. Think about that. 20% more out of the same tree.
That's that. You would think prices go down with that, wouldn't you?
Geez, Mike, I don't know. I'm not the economist, but right? Like these are a lot
supply
of things.
demand does dictate. Yes.
Yes. And that's what we're seeing, is that supply and demand is really dictating, just like it is in the market with houses that are available. Supply and demand is absolutely dictating those things, because again, don't think the loggers aren't getting richer. The people that own the land aren't getting paid more for their logs. The sawmills, largely speaking, aren't getting paid more. They're getting paid a little bit more, but not nearly as, not compared to the other parts of these gaps, which is there's a lot of places that have just a ton of inventory and it's built. What's really interesting is it's based on a lot of these contracts that are traded in the commodities market. And that's really what's pushing a lot of this stuff higher, is the speculation of those pieces, because none of those traders are taking delivery of those wood.
That's funny you bring this up. I didn't know where this was going to go, but I think I've been pretty clear. One of the stocks that bit me in the ass 20 years ago when I turned 197 into 40, right? Congratulations to me, was Enron.
Yeah.
Right. And Enron was a utility regulator or trader, whatever they called themselves before they went bust.
Yep.
I wonder if there's just somebody playing games in the commodities market, kind of cornering delivery or contracts. And if it is, folks, let me just promise you this: it'll feel good in the moment, and then it'll eventually bust on someone.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, those guys that trade those contracts, they know a lot more than you. That's why they're trading those contracts. They have the information that you necessarily don't. And largely speaking, you're going to get that information second.
They pay millions of dollars to find out.
Yeah.
What I think what happened is the little bit of research I did, because again, the inflation is, I mean, I like I told you, a fence cost me like 3x. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So one of the things I looked up was California had obviously really nasty fires last year.
Yep.
And, some of my research took the West Coast, right? The big mills on the West Coast were down 4 to 8 weeks, which people were telling me was the reason we had blips, right? Because the supply chain just had this big gap. But dude, that should be over by now, and prices are coming down. So maybe it is the traders. I haven't looked that up. That's good information.
Well, and I'm also not saying that this necessarily happened, but let's just put a couple points out there. The Excel pipeline that was shut down by the newest administration was shut down. And where's that oil come from? Canada. Comes from Canada, pipes down into the States. One of the things that I found rather interesting is that, do you know who the world's largest lumber producer is? Same
Canada.
person, Canada.
Oh, shocking.
Yeah.
Oh, they might be a little upset with us. Huh.
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, hey, you shut that stuff
Maybe.
down and now I don't have I mean, we waited all these years for you guys to get that thing up and going and now you're not going to do it. What? Say what? What? So I'm not saying that that's what happened, because, hey, there's a lot smarter people than me that went a lot further in school than I did that are going to do a lot more research than I could. But all of those things being said, I do find it rather interesting that the world's largest producer, that we're actually having issue getting stuff here. The other thing that I heard too is that we are on a net negative for number of sawmills that exist in the States from where we were in 08. A lot of them went bust in 8, 9, and 10.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of them went bust in 8.
A problem.
Yeah, a lot of them went bust in 8, 9, and 10. What's been interesting is if you look at a chart, lumber prices have gone from here to here in that time, and now just recently went like this. So these guys, the good news for them is they're finally, you look at some of these financial statements. There was one stock that I looked at, they're one of the big 5. I can't recall who it was, but their low was like $3.50 a share. I think that was basically a year ago. Right now they're trading at $63 a share.
Wow, 20x almost.
Yeah. So I mean, the other thing is, like, don't tell me that none of it's getting to their bottom line and everyone's just kind of looking at everybody going, I don't know where all these costs are, but we're not making any money. I promise you there's plenty of people making plenty of money. I think it's just something that if you want to delve deeper into it, by all means. But I thought that those things were rather interesting just based on the cursory look I took, because I got tired of paying $10 for a 2x4.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when you look at a supply chain, and everything's a supply chain, whether you're building cars or lumber, right? 100%. It starts as a tree. It's interesting. Really what I took from this conversation, the supply chain from the tree to somebody building a stick build, the money is probably being made, somewhere very early in the cycle, right? Because it's not the lumberjack. It's not the person doing the transportation. It's not a warehouse, it's probably somebody's making a shit ton of money. That's for sure. I
think it's a combination. I think the biggest benefactors, like I said, I mean, I don't know enough about the market on the commodities market to jump in there and say, yep, these are the ones that are trading the most contracts and they're the ones that are clearly driving a price. However, just like what you saw, Mike, and what we've seen with commodities that, $140 oil as an example back in 08, that there was no real justifiable reason for it. Mm-hmm. It just makes you scratch your head and go, I wonder how this stuff is tied together. And then again, it just all of a sudden with over course of a few years, now you're talking about it's $40 oil. Or the blip that we had last year where it was, negative $40. So if you had a tanker that you could keep in the ocean for a while, you were an instant millionaire. Yeah, negative $40. You're paying people to take your oil. That was crazy. Yeah, no place to put it. So, Mike, any last thoughts on this one? No, this has been a great conversation. We went deeper and farther than I normally go. So I appreciated this. This was fun. Yeah, happy to do it. Mike, where can we find you, my friend? One rental at a time. YouTube, Instagram, book, all the good stuff. All the good stuff. Look them up, guys. It's well worth your time. Mike, looking forward to segment number 3. Oh, folks, you got to watch number 3. I'm going to ask him questions. And I haven't gotten the list, so I'm excited. Nope, that's no fun. Yeah, excited and nervous. Yes. All right, talk soon, Mike. Thanks. Yep.